All right, guys. So this story right here is one of those stories where I feel like this should be a huge deal. Like everybody should be covering this. Everybody should be talking about this because it just proves in no uncertain terms where Trump's priorities are, right? But look, I'll make you a very sad guarantee. I'm probably going to be the only outlet that talks about this. Maybe there might be a few examples in left-wing independent media where they talk about it, but we're going to be one of the only outlets. It's going to get like zero burn on CNN or even MSNBC, which, by the way, they've been like quite a bit better lately. But man, this pisses me off, dog. So when nobody was looking, what Trump did is he rolled back one of the policies that was honestly one of my favorite Joe Biden policies. As you all know, Biden struggled to get $15 minimum wage through the Senate. He ran into some roadblocks. I believe there were like 7 or 8 Democrats who were like not on board with $15 minimum wage, which is totally inexcusable, by the way. Every single one of those Democrats is a Democrat in name only, a dino. But there's one thing Biden did do, realizing, all right, look, I tried to get it through the Senate, couldn't really do it. You could argue he didn't fight hard enough. I'd probably agree with that. But either way, what he did is he said, well, what I can control is the minimum wage for federal government contractors and employees, right? I have the ability, and in this instance, the unilateral ability to raise their wage. So that's exactly what he did. So Biden signed an executive order to say we're doing $15 minimum wage for all federal contractors and employees, right? And that literally helps about 400,000 people got a raise as a direct result of that. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Trump axes $15 contractor wage infrastructure project orders. President Donald Trump scrapped a Biden-era executive order that raised the minimum wage for federal contractors to $15 an hour and drove federal infrastructure investments towards companies that agreed to union neutrality. So that's another thing he did, is basically what this means is if you are an anti-union company, you're like now disfavored for federal government contracts. That's what that means. So this was Joe Biden genuinely being pro-labor, right? Just like when he signed the project labor agreements. That was a big deal. This was a big deal. The president also nixed an order directing federal agencies to incentivize the use of registered apprenticeships by their contracts. The rescissions came late Friday and add to Trump's revocation of more than 6 dozen executive orders on Inauguration Day. Trump's move to cancel the contractor pay raise, which started to apply to new or renewed federal contracts in 2022, comes after some businesses and several Republican-led states sued over the executive order with mixed success. So my reading of this is that it wasn't really mixed success because most of the courts upheld Biden's ruling here. And actually, it's even a little bit better than they're letting on because it was $15 minimum wage when he signed it, but there were scheduled raises as part of this executive order. So with Trump slapping it down, he's now slapping it down when it's at $17.75. They say the U.S. Supreme Court in January declined to take up the legal question of whether enacting the $15 wage was within former President Joe Biden's presidential procurement authority, largely leaving the boost in place. Yeah, so that was even the Supreme Court rejecting the case on it. That was their way of upholding the lower court's ruling, and the lower court's ruling was, yes, the president has the authority to set the wages for the federal contractors and employees. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit also backed the wage last month, joining with the 10th Circuit, but splitting from the 9th Circuit because the executive order and subsequent rule implementing Biden's wage increase also included annual adjustments for inflation. The current minimum wage for contractors under Executive Order 14026 is $17.75. Look, next time somebody tells you, hey man, Trump is like pro-worker, I need you to laugh them out of the room, and I need you to remember these examples. That it was Joe Biden who signed an executive order raising the minimum wage for federal employees and contractors to $15 an hour, and then it would get raises over time, so it was $17.75. And it was Donald Trump who went in there and slapped it down. It was Joe Biden who signed the executive order to be more favorable to union companies and to snub the non-union companies, and Donald Trump rolled that back immediately. It was Joe Biden who signed the CHIPS Act, and the CHIPS Act would have created 115,000 high-paying manufacturing jobs in this country, and Donald Trump went in there and froze it. And Trump had the nerve to talk about a new manufacturing boom in this country, a new golden age of manufacturing coming to this country. At the same fucking time, they just killed 115,000 high-paying factory jobs. And by the way, when you look at the first term, as you all know, Trump outsourced 200,000 manufacturing jobs then. So that means he was also lying in 2016 when he said, "Oh, I'm gonna protect your jobs. There's gonna be no more outsourcing. I'm gonna make sure Hillary would outsource your jobs. I'm gonna protect your jobs." This is what he was going around saying. Under him, we lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs. By the way, that's to say nothing of the 2.3 million people that lost their health insurance and the 2.7 million job loss overall. He was a horrible, horrible steward of the economy. But at the same time, all this is going on too, I should point out, you all know, what else did he destroy? The NLRB, which is basically like the union agency of the government, which makes sure that they protect your right to unionize. If you're in a union, you have some issue with management, it's the NLRB who would step in and enforce the law and enforce fairness and justice. And Trump gets in there and destroys the NLRB, just like he destroyed the CFPB, which is the anti-scam police that want to make sure Wall Street and big banks can't rip you off. So again, anytime somebody says, "Oh, this guy's for the little guy, bro. This guy's anti-establishment. This guy's for workers, bro." Remember when they made that big deal? Because the Teamsters refused to endorse Kamala. The Teamsters did that. People, "Oh, Donald Trump getting all this union support, bro." Meanwhile, if you go look at the specifics, count it up. The number of unions that endorsed Kamala Harris far surpassed the number of unions that endorsed Donald Trump. They had to make a big deal out of one of the unions abstaining, right? And so, again, this is what I need everybody to understand. There's optics in politics, right? So there's the fluff PR bullshit, the marketing bullshit, and then there's the reality of politics. And now you're learning this information. Do you think there's going to be anybody on the right that even knows about this story? Just like we had the MAGA judge recently throw out increased overtime pay for, I believe it was either 4 million workers or 8 million workers. Again, that was a Biden rule. Biden said, "I want to raise the overtime pay and give more people overtime pay." MAGA judge goes in there, slaps that down. How many people in MAGA do you know who know these things I'm telling you? Number one. And then number two, if you were to tell them, how many of them wouldn't believe you or would pretend like it was fake news? And honestly, some of them wouldn't even care if it was real unless it directly affected them. They'll find a way to rationalize, they'll find a way to justify, and they'll find a way to say, "No, Trump is for the working class." So God, this story got under my skin. And one of the main reasons it got under my skin is because as I was reading it, I was like, nobody's going to fucking talk about this. Nobody's going to cover it. Nobody's going to talk about it. Nobody's going to know about it. And then we're going to go on having our stupid fucking optical debates where the right virtue signals like they care about working people and they care about unions and they care about labor, while every single decision they make is screwing labor over and over and over again. Just like with Trump's tax bill. There's another thing MAGA doesn't know, is that they've done reports on this, they've done studies on this. When you crunch the numbers on it, was it the Economic Policy Institute, I believe, may have been the outlet that did it? Trump effectively ends up raising taxes for the bottom 90 to 95% of Americans and only cuts it for the top 5% of Americans. That's what he does. That's a fact. So in other words, when he talks about cutting taxes, he's not talking about you. He's talking about the wealthy and he's talking about corporations. Just like with his bill in the first term where 83% of the benefits of it went to the top 1%. It's going to be even worse this time. And his tariffs are colossally regressive. What does that mean? It means that it hits the working class more than it hits the wealthy, right? So to say it's a regressive tax means like if you're at the bottom rung of the economic ladder, it will hit you harder. Like the middle and the lower class will be hit harder by these taxes, and it'll cost them more than it will for the top. That's what a regressive tax is. Like a flat tax would be that, but certainly what Trump is doing is like that with the tariffs. It's effectively at least a 25% tax on the American people, and working class people can't afford that. Of course they can't fucking afford that. And so example number 7,412 of just the absolute destruction and obliteration of the working class as a direct result of Trump's decisions. Understand, this is a president of, by, and for the robber barons. That's the bottom line. He may bullshit you, he may lie, he may virtue signal, he may pretend from time to time like That's not what his core is and what his foundation is. But based on his actions, which is all that really matters at the end of the day, the actual policies, based on his actions, I don't know, what would you call it? If the previous guy did $15 minimum wage for 400,000 federal government contractors, and then this guy slaps it down, what would you call that? Who's that helping out? Right? In this instance, it would be like, oh, we're saving tax money. Yeah, you're also saving tax money by fucking cutting pediatric cancer research. That's how Elon talks about cutting pediatric cancer research and flight safety officials and nuclear safety engineers, right? So I said it before, I'll say it again. I have yet to see a single good decision in Trump's second term. I haven't seen a single good decision. I'm a fair guy. I like to be as objective as humanly possible. When Trump pardoned Alice Johnson in the first term, I said, that's great. That woman shouldn't have been in prison. When he signed the First Step Act, I said, hey, that's good. Credit where credit is due. I like that. When he said, oh, we're done, we're not doing the TPP, that new trade deal, I said, hey, awesome. I'll give credit where it's due, man. I'll give credit where it's due. I literally have not seen a single thing which is positive. Not one thing which is positive. And then you do see horrific things like this that nobody fucking talks about. Nobody talks about. So what the Democrats need to wakey, bro. You gotta wake up. You have to tell people about this. You have to say, Democrats were for the $15 minimum wage. Biden signed an order to raise it for federal contractors and employees. This guy got rid of it. And it's not even fair. It's $17.75 is effectively what it was. We gave them overtime pay. He took away the overtime pay. Like, this is what you have to say. This is what you have to do. It's politics. It's basic politics. And in this case, it's basic factual reality. And the facts won't sell themselves. You have to sell them. You have to sell them. You have to tell people. So yet another example of a disgusting betrayal of the working class by Trump. Let me tell you this. Imagine it was Biden in there, and Trump had signed before him the $15 minimum wage for 400,000 federal contractors, and then Biden gets in there and scraps it. Would you ever hear the fucking end of that? You would never hear the end of that. The Republicans would bring that up all the fucking time and be like, this guy just stabbed the working class in the back. Why do you axe $15 minimum wage? Why do you want to lower the pay for these hardworking Americans? Honest, hardworking Americans who are just trying to pay the bills, and you want to cut their pay? What the fuck is wrong with you? You despise the working class. You're lowering wages. But when you reverse the scenario, yawn, nobody talks about it, nobody's going to know about it, and everybody's just going to pretend, oh yeah, Trump, working class, bro, helping out the working class. My fucking ass cheeks. Try following what's actually happening. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.